have a young Rhaenyra Targaryen and young Alicent Hightower recently cast for House of the Dragon, and that could mean one of two things. Well, more than two things, but I'm not smart enough to know the third. So House of the Dragon is the terrible Targaryen civil war that happened about 129-ish years after Aegon the Conqueror decided to begin his conquest of the Seven Kingdoms. So the show takes place about 170-ish years before the main show. And don't listen to the HBO website that still says for House of the Dragon that it happens 300 years before the show. It's wrong, and we need to shame them harshly until they change it. So at first I thought we were going to start House of the Dragon at 129 AC or roundabouts then, and I thought that was a complete waste. Why not start earlier, way before the Dance of the Dragons, and kind of set things up a bit more? And from all the leaks and spoilers we've been getting, it really seemed like they were sticking around that time period. But now we have a glimmer of hope that we may see all the way back to 106 AC, with a young Alicent and a young Rhaenyra cast for the show. So the adult versions of the characters, Rhaenyra Targaryen is played by Aemma D'Arcy, and Alicent Hightower's adult is played by Olivia Cooke. Rhaenyra is the child of King Viserys I, and Alicent Hightower ends up marrying him in 106 AC when she's 18 years old, which is pretty old to be married, but I just assume everyone knew she was a rotten flower and didn't want her. However, let's get into HBO casting the two new actresses this month. One, a young Rhaenyra, played by 18-year-old Millie Alcock, and a young Alicent Hightower, played by 20-year-old Emily Carey. There's also a new character synopsis HBO gave for them, or specific to them. It's really not too much different, but I'm just going to read it to you just in case you're interested, you know. Millie Alcock as young Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen. She's the king's firstborn child of pure Valyrian blood, and she is a dragon rider. Many would say that Rhaenyra was born with everything, but she was not born a man. Which is almost word for word exactly adult Rhaenyra Targaryen's description. Young Alicent Hightower's is a tiny bit different with some words, but not by much. Emily Carey will play young Alicent Hightower, the daughter of Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, the most comely woman in the Seven Kingdoms. Alicent was raised in the Red Keep, close to the king and his innermost circle. She possesses both a courtly grace and a keen political acumen. Also, she's totally a player. You know she is. She's a monster. Well, I think the easy answer to these two younger versions of the character being cast being, oh, flashbacks, it's just flashbacks. I want to give HBO a bit more credit and really hope they're going to bring us back for a few episodes to 106 AC, maybe a few years before, maybe when King Viserys takes the throne, instead of just doing a shitty flashback or two. Spend some episodes in an earlier time before jumping forward, HBO, please. Both ladies do have it listed that they have a reoccurring role, but that could honestly just mean a couple episodes, a couple flashbacks, so we might actually, in fact, get flashbacks. And if you remember, the main show didn't use a lot of flashbacks just towards the end of the show, and even then they fucked up and didn't have as many as they should have had. D&D. But since D&D have no touching of this project, their fingers aren't in the House of the Dragon cookie jar, maybe we are going to get some flashbacks. And despite so far us only seeing the adult versions of their characters filming scenes, that doesn't mean necessarily that they're being cast just for flashbacks. They don't really film in order scenes, episodes, so maybe they're just getting done with that, and then the first couple episodes will in fact deal with their younger counterparts and seeing how their relationship becomes super, super toxic. So people can understand a bit more who haven't read Fire and Blood or any of the other short stories. these bitches really hated each other and why. No, they really want to make it a compelling story. I think they should go back as far as when King Viserys I was married to Aemma Arryn and all the struggles they went through and them having Rhaenyra and her passing away and why Viserys I just loves Rhaenyra so much. So we add a bit more sympathy to Rhaenyra Targaryen. And on the other side, if we showed a bit more before King Viserys I takes the throne, we could show a young Alicent Hightower actually taking care of Jaehaerys I and showing a softer side of her and what she went through to comfort an old man. Though, of course, her motives may be evil. I'm hoping they go this route, and I'm keeping my ears open for casting for a younger version of Rhaenyra and Alicent, because if they set it up from the time that they're both a lot younger, like kids, that would be fantastic. There's so much story that they can tell. They just don't need to start a year or months before the Targaryen Civil War and then give us 1 or 2 flashbacks. No. Lay it all out. Plus, in HBO, I know you know this, the more division you create amongst fans of whose side is right, the more buzz you get, the more people making videos, the more forum posts, the more Facebook posts and tweets and all that, and it generates more energy. So start with them being a lot younger, see the different paths they took and why and how they get to the point they get to when they are adults, so that some people are on Alicent's side and some people are on Rhaenyra's side, and then they just fight it out. And I guess if you want a comparison, think of Fear the Walking Dead. They had a great premise of showing the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, showing how the walkers came about, but they spent so little time with that and then jumped full into the apocalypse. Seeing the slow breakdown of society or how the walker infection started would have been great, but they pissed the bed. HBO, don't piss the bed. Don't jump all the way ahead. Build the groundwork, and then go into the war. We don't have to go into the dragons and fire and boobies. Well, we can still do boobies in the first couple episodes, just not the children. And I'm crossing my fingers so much that we don't just jump into the Dance of the Dragons, or that it's set a few months before that, and then they go into it. I really hope they set up these characters, they show them younger, and then going forward before we jump into all of that. And if we just show maybe the war starting with the final episode, that'd be great. But those are my thoughts. Maybe you want to jump right into the Dance of the Dragons. Maybe you don't want that build-up. Maybe you just don't care. Like, subscribe, and let me know whether you would like to see a much younger version of Rhaenyra and Alicent, if you think we'll actually spend some episodes in an earlier time period, or if they're just cast for flashbacks and they're just gonna jump right into the Civil War.